as well. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I call to order this meeting of the Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, November 21st, 2023. And in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I acknowledge that we're gathered here in the heart of Treaty 7 territory of Southern Alberta. This land is home to the Blackfoot Confederacy, consisting of the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani First Nations, also the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and our most adjacent Indigenous neighbors, the Stoney Nakoda, comprised of the Bearspaw, Goodstoney, and Chiniki First Nations. Further, we are located within Métis Nation of Alberta, District 4. The town of Canmore is committed to working to live in right relations and to advance truth and reconciliation as we acknowledge the many Indigenous peoples whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. I'm grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today, and those who have gone before us. As we are all treaty people, we each have ongoing responsibilities to protect and honor all life. Now moving to the agenda for today's meeting. Anything changed? Nothing. I will then move the agenda, move approval of the agenda for November 21st, 2023, Committee of the Whole meeting as circulated. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And we'll move to our delegation from the Biosphere Institute. Mr. Thompson, welcome to Committee of the Whole. Ms. Van Gaal, and Ms. Van Gaal, you're going to introduce?
I am, thank you. So my name is Caitlin Van Gaal, the Supervisor of Environment and Sustainability of the town, and I'm here to introduce Gareth Thompson, that is Executive Director of the Biosphere Institute of the Bow Valley. Gareth is going to give you a brief update on the work that the Biosphere has undertaken over the past year. And I just want to add that I have worked very closely with Gareth and his team over the past year, and their work really does help to move forward the work of the town on climate action and human-wildlife coexistence. It's always a pleasure to work with Gareth. So,
Great.
Over to you. I'll get
Thank
your
you.
presentation out.
Thanks, Caitlin. Thanks to the members of council. Look, I view it as my job to help amplify the good work of the council and administration. We've been at this as the Biosphere Institute for 26 years now, created by the town of Canmore back in the day. And if at any time Councillor Edmund would like, wants to put something on the table that the Biosphere, they feel the Biosphere could and should do, let's have a conversation. Let's try and make that happen. And goodness knows I try and do that as much as I can from my end, but it's a two-way street. So our staff, the man with a large wingspan in the middle is Nick DeReuter, our WildSmart coordinator. We've just been joined, and this is, please note the the artfulness with which I inserted the list. It's hardly noticeable that I inserted our latest best staff member, Tanya. And so a little bit about us. We have a grand total of 11 on the board. We're privileged to work with Councillor Ma from the town of Canmore, Mayor Corey DeMano from Banff, and the Reeve of the MD of Bighorn, Lisa Roosevelt, in addition to a variety of good folk from the community. Our mission, which I love, is to empower community leadership to address environmental problems. And a quick snapshot taken from our annual report, which I'm happy to send around, of our revenue. And we're so grateful to the town of Canmore for its ongoing support of our work with that municipal grant that's shown here. We've been able to parlay that in a couple of different ways and leverage that contribution to get other grants from and monies from, say, individuals, as you can see here, private donations, but also foundations, and also most recently the town of Banff, which has come on board for 3 years at $50,000 per year to help us expand our operations into across the Bow Valley, as per the name. So WildSmart seeks to support human-wildlife coexistence in the Bow Valley. We work with 29 WildSmart ambassadors. The gentleman shown here, Derek, gave one of our Earth Talks just last night about human-wildlife coexistence in the urban interface. Another thing this is some images of our work expanding to Banff with the wildlife ambassadors in partnership with Banff National Park and the town of Banff. One thing this is an example of that which we seek to do throughout all of our programs, and that is help support equitably deserving communities and help support those who in this expensive little town need a bit of support. So this is a program for anyone who's a member of the Affordability Services Program. We just began this year. The average visitor to our valley flies in, buys bear spray, doesn't use it, leaves it at the visitor center, and then gets on a plane and flies home. And so we collect those hundreds of cans and we distribute them free of charge through this program to members of the Affordability Services Program. And we try and do that in all programs at some level, whatever that might look like. One of the things that to help advance WildSmart and its goals is we take an active interest in the Roundtable on Human-Wildlife Coexistence. I have the privilege of chairing the technical working group with John Paskowski, who's second from the left here. You'll see Caitlin Van Gaal at the top of the table, and we meet quarterly to talk about the technicalities, I suppose, of human and wildlife coexistence, reporting to the Roundtable, the parent group, which meets twice a year. One of the things we've got our eye on is accelerating attractant management. This is not a photograph of the boss, the famous grizzly bear in Banff, but it might as well be, and it could be. And that's a grizzly bear at risk, and grizzly bears are a species at risk in this province. The notion, as we all know, attracting wildlife into urban areas because of some foodstuff that they can find is not good for the bear, and it's not safe for people. And we're working in partnership with the town of Canmore on a couple of different fronts. And there's a letter, there's a note in the, I believe in the Rocky Mountain Outlook this week, basically celebrating, if they quoted me, and I hope they do, I hope they did. Really, I just want to give a shout out to this, to this is a wonderful council to support on an environmental front, on a whole bunch of different fronts, including the fact that the Finance Committee, as I understand it, has recommended a $30,000 infusion of cash into the town coffers for each of the next 5 years to take the leadership on this, take the leadership on removing the town's own trees and leading by example. And if that passes the budget, passes in the budget, and it's my hope that it does, then that's just another stalwart example of the town of Canmore showing leadership on the environmental front in this area and doing its part to accelerate attractant management. We believe we can leverage that fact at the Biosphere, and just through our work, get residents to follow suit. A little bit about our Future Leaders program. There's three main kind of, if you will, pillars, WildSmart and Future Leaders now. We're broadening our focus this year to support children in non-formal programs, which involves, as you can see, a lot of municipal programs. We believe in learning through action, so we invite youth to volunteer with us, doing things like garbage pickup, cleanup of Quarry Lake. You can see the wonderful Heidi Widmer who leads that program. This is an example of this was done in Banff and Canmore. This is the Yellowfish Road. Kids decorating doorsteps with the yellow fish that you can see, reminding people that storm drains are a direct conduit to our local water ecosystem, and please keep it clean, folks, is the take-home message, and here they are stenciling those yellow fish on the sidewalks there. Just one of our kind of examples for kids. Another one here is just engaging them in the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation and doing some hands-on learning, which is one of our hallmarks as an education organization. And updated lesson plans, which we provide to teachers here and elsewhere in the country, in the universe, just using the magic of the internet. Shifting to our shift, the third of our three programs, we believe in education and engagement around climate. We do that in a couple of different ways. This year, for the second year in a row, we had a Green Buildings open house. And I want to say, too, that everything that I talk about here, we will replicate next year. It tends to be ongoing. They're tried and true programs, including this. This year, we were in Banff, Canmore, and Dead Man's Flats. Next year will be the same again, possibly more communities and certainly more buildings. Possibly business as well as home. We also take pride in working with all community sectors. I'm intensely aware that the Climate Emergency Action Plan you're putting together has direct control and locus of control over just 4 to 6% of all emissions in the community of the town of Canmore. I think it's up to the community to go after the rest, and we through this process, we hope to accelerate climate action in the Bow Valley and engage the community to help deliver that other 95%. Slowly but surely, using inspirational speakers, learning about local projects, connecting with others. We do that in plenary. We do that through hearing from kids, either to kids at Our Lady of Snow, who are really dramatically reducing the carbon footprint of their school through their work, which is inspiration. Nothing if not inspirational. It was fantastic to hear, and there's many other stories. This is. I view our work as we must do this in service to our client municipalities, the MD, the Canmore and Banff. We worked hard on doing exactly that with these students. This is GeoExchange is a technology that can be used to create low carbon sources of energy to heat and cool buildings. And we're looking really hard at that and helping promote that to partner municipalities, in part through the research that these students convened, that final report and the slide deck drawn up by the gentleman in the red checker shirt with the black glasses, Amir, has been circulated to our client municipalities, and we're in conversations right now with the Canmore Housing regarding the Palliser, and seeking to do some hydrogeology studies and just prove out this concept to support district heating on the Palliser district area structure plan that you recently approved. So, in other news, having taken a close look at BODA and its executive director Ian O'Donnell, I made the determination about a year ago that we could work together, and there's two beautiful overlapping Venn diagrams of interest in buildings that overlap in the interest of sustainability. And I'm pleased to report, and I'm grateful to people like the Mayor and Councillor Graham who were able to attend this event. We pulled off this event at the Malcolm with 165 of our closest friends around this jointly delivered initiative to try and move the needle and try and accelerate the uptake of sustainable building technologies and urban planning in the Canmore, in the Bow Valley, and indeed in Alberta. And there were people there from all over the country. So it was well received. As you can see, number one on this graph is terrible, and number 5 is superb, and people generally quite liked what they had to experience. We've booked the Malcolm for November 2nd and 3rd of 2024 to replicate this great thing. Very grateful to the Mayor. This was very highly received, this engagement. These are the mayors of Canmore, Banff, and Calgary answering the focus question that's on the screen here. What does building sustainability look like where you live? What plans do you have to accelerate this? It got really high marks from people who listened, and I feel I know it was very well received. Last but not least, and this just in, and you don't have this in your packages, apologies for that, but these couple of images, as part of our contribution to Community Week, we held a fundraiser and square dance just last Friday that was again with 175 of our closest friends, and just a chance to put a smile on people's faces and celebrate community, which I feel we did. I present to you the present and past sustainability coordinators of the town of Canmore, with your wonderful climate specialist in the middle, and indeed Carolyn Hayden with the communications with the town of Canmore. Good time was had by all, and funny enough, we'll do that again November 15th, 2024, just to kind of help community come together and understand it at a very, at a light level, what the Biosphere Institute has to offer.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Really appreciated that very fulsome presentation and covering a lot of work that the Biosphere does. And it of course, is obvious that the work of the Biosphere is an important part of our climate action work as a community. And so our dollars really go to help expand beyond that 6% of emissions that we directly control. So thank you for coming and speaking to us today. Looking to members of the Committee of the Whole to see if there are any questions. Councillor McCallum.
How much did you fundraise? A great
Um,
gimmick, by the way. Do-si-do, well done. That's fun.
No, I'm happy to share that. The preliminary results from the square dance is what I think you were asking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
And we try and be an honest broker when it comes to telling the financial story, because there's some staff time involved. So
Of
minus
course.
the staff time, which staff time came in at about $5,000 just for Tanya and Nick and I, and so we cleared in excess of $5,500
That's all right.
on the night, thanks to some very generous donations from the community.
And it's a fun event, from what I'm told, so enjoy.
At the best time you can have with your boots on,
Yes, that's what I heard. That's
Councillor McCallum.
perfect, thanks.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I spoke out of turn.
Right on. I like that. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for your presentation. And thank you for your acknowledgement of the fund that we put together for removing fruit trees on town land. And I wonder how the Biosphere might leverage that in the future.
Yeah, so something that I believe, if we have a secret sauce, it is to try and engage folks in an authentic manner to help persuade them to do the right thing through a combination of really engagement and education. We leave the enforcement and that, so we're the carrot, part of the carrot and stick equation.
We are the stick.
If you will. And so, as their speaker last night at the Earth Talk said, we need both a carrot and a stick in this wildlife management business. So I believe that people need to know that there's leadership, and what you're hoping to do with the extra money, if it passes budget, is a clear demonstration of leadership. It's getting your house in order. It's leading by example, and we can shine a light on that. So we propose a series of videos just to talk about the work. So we might interview perhaps Caitlin or something around that line and say, well, here's what we're doing and here's why we're doing it. And then people would watch that and say, here's what I could do, and here's, we call upon, and somewhere in there would be an intermediary, perhaps the Biosphere, saying, we call upon the average resident to dodge the darn fines that they sometimes get because they forget to, clear up their crab apples, and just do the right thing. And here's what the right thing might look like, and just help move the needle in terms of the culture of acceptance around wildlife attractant. We have over 2,500 fruit trees in the town of Canmore that need to go away in order to make this a safe place for bears and for humans. And that won't happen overnight, but it's a thing. I want to just remind everyone here that Canmore is looked upon, 20 years ago we banned, and I shared this with the editor of the local Rocky Mountain Outlook, 20 years ago we banned, we basically created the council of the time, led by Bert Dick, created bear-proof garbage containers, and that was a game changer there were dozens of bears getting killed prior to that, and that went down to almost zero because of that single move. We are looked upon as an exemplar internationally. Are we there yet? Are we the best at, can we sit back and rest on our laurels? The answer is no, there's always work to be done. But we need to celebrate the fact how well we're doing, while at the same time with a bifocal approach look at the next opportunity to do even better, to keep bears safe, to keep people safe.
Thank you for all your good work, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Councillor.
So with regards to fruit tree removal, I know that there is a multi-stakeholder initiative, an application for funding that will help hopefully encourage on a large scale fruit tree removal. We were noted that when we were in our finance committee, and we were hoping that also by addressing the trees on public lands, that would help maybe support that, or show a commitment from the town that we have skin in the game and are very serious about it. Wondering if you could speak to that.
Absolutely. So we spent a lot of time in October putting together a really good proposal for the major grants wing of the Calgary Foundation. Calgary Foundation is a big, important foundation. It's the second biggest foundation in Canada. 1 in 7 proposals in Canada get funded, are successful, and we're in a time where success rates are dropping on proposals, and the amounts donated or granted by grantors is also dropping. So This is a long shot. It's a wonderful proposal. We got 12 superbly strong letters of support from folks like yourself. And we put our best foot forward, there's no doubt. And yet, we're in competition with a whole bunch of other worthy things. So, in my view, probability is low. Sorry, but there it is. I mean, it's just the way.
Well, that's statistically valid.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, when is the timing for their decision-making?
It's very much our hope that we'll get invited to come in to drill down on the content of that proposal in December. That would, if we get that invitation, it implies we've made it through the first round, and then they'll consider our everything with a decision in March of 2024.
Well, hopefully you'll get that invitation, and hopefully the recommendations to the Finance Committee and perhaps Council approval before then, since it comes to us on the 5th. Hopefully that will help as well.
I would be pleased to once the budget's passed, and if that item is in it, I'd be very pleased to leverage that with a note to the Calgary Foundation to that effect, saying, look, skin in the game from the town of Canmore, even more so than was originally countenanced. I just want to add too that I'm so grateful to Councillor Ma for attending our board meetings, and if he's privy to the detailed plans we've made for 2024 with our 6 staff, and by all means, just either through him or through me, happy to answer any questions about what's coming over the next year, because I didn't spend a ton of time. I wanted to let you guys know what I had done with the generous support to date.
Great, thank you. Looking to see if there are any other questions. Seeing none, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Mr.
and
Mayor.
coming and visiting us.
Okay, anytime. Cheers.
Now move to item C1, minutes of the October 17th Committee of the Whole. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I move approval of the minutes of October 17th, 2023 Committee of the Whole as presented. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And now we'll move to staff reports. Item D1, the 2023 Bow Valley Housing and Service Needs Estimation Report. Ms. West, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of Council. My name is Elle West. I'm the Town of Canmore's Community Evaluator, and I'm here today with my colleague, Ms. Sachiho Miller. She's the Advocacy and Outreach Counselor at the YWCA Banff, and also the Chair of the Homeless to Housing Coalition. We're here to present today the results of the 2023 Housing and Service Needs Estimation. We'll share some of the background on this estimation, the highlights of the results of the survey, recommendations for next steps, and we'll leave some time at the end for questions.
I want to share a little bit of background. The town of Canmore participates in the Homeless to Housing Coalition along with other agencies. This year, H2HC collaborated with the Rural Development Network in order to estimate the number of people experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity in the Bow Valley. This estimation was conducted province-wide, and 21 other rural communities also conducted the survey at the same time. This is H2HC's third time participating in this research. The first large-scale effort to survey across the province occurred in 2018 and again in 2020.
When it comes to homelessness and understanding its causes, the focus is often more on urban centers, where visibility of those experiencing homelessness is more apparent. Rural homelessness is less visible, and due to the hidden nature of rural homelessness, it often receives less acknowledgement, understanding, as well as less funding. This estimation project is conducted in order to provide a comprehensive picture of homelessness and housing insecurity, including demographic information on who's experiencing homelessness, which services are being accessed, and which services may be missing. Also, to help inform organizations, funders, and multiple levels of government about housing and homelessness by providing up-to-date data on housing and service needs in the Bow Valley. Another reason is to develop a process that is respectful and contextually relevant for service providers to engage with and to collect data from those who are experiencing homelessness or risk of it. Also, to elevate and incorporate the voices of people experiencing homelessness into the solutions to end homelessness, and to provide recommendations and next steps for service providers and all levels of government.
So that from previous estimation projects have assisted with successfully launching significant supports in the Bow Valley. In fall 2019, YWCA Banff, with support from H2HC, secured a 4.5-year grant from Rural Development Network to operate 3 emergency and transitional housing spaces all year round, as well as the interest-free rent support program called Sustaining Home Loan. These emergency and transitional housing units are designed to support individuals and families who are between housing options. Sustaining Home Loan program is designed to help households to secure or maintain housing. In winter 2020, RDN funding also supported the initiation of H2HC MAP program working group in launching the REST pilot program in Canmore. REST pilot program was a low-barrier overnight winter shelter designed to provide individuals with a safe shelter space during the cold winter months. This has since become a homelessness society of the Bow Valley. HSBV is now a registered nonprofit society which provides year-round outreach support and is currently preparing to open its shelter doors for the 4th consecutive winter.
This is the 3rd time participating in the survey. Previous estimations were done in 2018 and 2020. And prior to this, estimations or counts of homeless populations often use the point-in-time approach. This involved simply walking through a community, especially in urban centers like cities where there were known neighborhoods where folks were likely to be found, and simply counting the number of people found sleeping rough, as well as connecting with shelters and collecting numbers from them of how many people were there on an individual night. This method gives a snapshot of the number of people experiencing homelessness for that particular moment in time, but it doesn't capture folks who are housing insecure, who may be couch surfing, who are not visible on that particular night, or who do have a place to stay, but it might not be a safe one. This survey was developed as an alternate means of collecting data about folks experiencing homelessness. It is a survey that's circulated through agencies who are likely to serve or encounter folks who are homeless or at risk of it, including shelters, food banks, and other community agencies. This survey was originally called the Homeless Estimation, but that name was changed purposefully to the Housing and Service Needs Estimation. It's a mouthful, but it's in recognition of the stigma associated with homelessness. And it also helps to gather information from anyone who wished to participate in the survey rather than trying to target certain people. Inside this survey, folks were asked to identify, instead of identifying themselves as homeless or housing insecure, they were asked questions about their living conditions. And then based on their responses to this survey and the data analysis, the Rural Development Network was able to determine which folks were housing insecure.
So Canadian Observatory on Homelessness defines homelessness in 4 categories. First is unsheltered. This describes people who lack housing and are not accessing emergency shelters. This means living on the streets or in places not intended for human habitation. For example, sidewalks, parks, vehicles, and garage. Emergency sheltered, people who are staying in overnight shelters due to homelessness or family violence. Provisionally accommodated. This includes people with an accommodation that is temporary or that lacks security for tenure. For example, couch surfing, staying in hostels or motels, people who are housed seasonally and living in transitional housing. The last one is at-risk homelessness. This definition includes people who are not yet homeless, but whose current economic and/or housing situation is precarious or does not meet public health and safety standards. For example, people who are having difficulty paying rent due to unstable employment or sudden unemployment, facing eviction, living in overcrowded situations, facing abuse in current housing, and folks whose housing may be condemned for health, law, or safety violation. It is important to remember that individuals who fall under those definitions often cycle through the spectrum regularly. There may not be as many who are living on the street one day, but number could change every day. For this report, the term insecure housing will be used to encompass the entire spectrum of homelessness.
This table demonstrates the diversity of respondents' experiences with housing insecurity in the Bow Valley, and it outlines that homelessness presents itself in more ways than simply sleeping outside. The total survey respondents identified as housing insecure were 1,091. But for this particular question, folks were asked what circumstances they had experienced in the last month, and they were able to choose more than one option, which is why we see a total number here greater than 1,091. The respondents that have been identified as at risk of homelessness mentioned their difficulty in being able to afford their rent or their mortgage. They mentioned having stayed in a home with unsafe conditions, including one with no windows, some with no electricity. And many respondents also are living in overcrowded situations. Those who indicated they were experienced being provisionally accommodated mentioned staying in medical or detox facilities, also jail and remand centers, and transitional housing units. Others noted living in homes that belonged to their employers or to an Indigenous government. Many also indicated staying in a home unwillingly because they have nowhere else to go, staying with a stranger because they have nowhere else to go, or enduring violence because they had nowhere else to go. Those who indicated that they experienced being emergency sheltered or unsheltered mentioned staying in domestic violence shelters, emergency shelters, staying in makeshift shelters, including tents, vehicles, a shack, or for some people, even staying outside, completely unsheltered. When we think about provisionally accommodated, we know that this can include folks who are living in staff accom, and a lot of times the picture brought to mind is young folks coming to work seasonally. So we've included the average ages of each of these people in these categories for a little bit more knowledge.
The results that Elle showed really do demonstrate the diversity of housing insecurity, specifically the fact that people often cycle through the spectrum even in the short time. Of 1,091 unique housing insecure respondents, 416 reported that they accessed an emergency shelter or transitional housing in the past 12 months, which equates 38% of housing insecure respondents. However, 51% indicated that they did not or could not access a shelter when needed. The top 5 reasons were they didn't access shelter, or the right kind of shelter wasn't available, the shelter was full, they didn't feel safe, they didn't meet the intake criteria, or no shelter in the area.
Now for some demographic info on who participated in the survey. As you can see in this slide, there were responses collected from all across the Bow Valley, including Canmore, Banff, Lake Louise, MD of Bighorn, and Minitini.
The survey respondents who were housing insecure included a variety of genders, ages, and racial identities, as you can see in this slide. I want to note that in the briefing note, there was mention of housing insecure youth, because there were survey respondents who identified themselves as a youth. But when we looked at each respondent's year of birth to categorize the age groups, there were actually no respondents under the age of 19.
Of all the survey respondents experiencing housing insecurity in the Bow Valley, over 85% of them have lived in the Bow Valley for more than 1 year. 11% of them reported they have always lived here in the Valley. 17% said they've been here for more than 8 years, 10% between 5 and 8 years, 18% between 3 and 5 years, and 29% between 1 and 3 years.
So respondents were asked to detail their household makeup. As part of the survey, of the housing insecure respondents, 23% are single-parent households, and 35% live in the multi-generational homes. As mentioned earlier, 1,091 unique survey respondents were identified as housing insecure, according to the national definition of homelessness. An additional 1,061 dependents, including children, and 1,847 adults were living with these respondents. Therefore, based on survey results, there were at least 3,999 community members were experiencing housing insecurity in the Bow Valley during March 2023.
One of the results from the survey worth highlighting is employment rates. In the Bow Valley, 90% of housing insecure survey respondents are employed in some capacity. 71% are full-time employed, 20% are part-time, 7% casual, and the others are either seasonal, contract, or self-employed. These folks are not living below the poverty line either. Only 18% of employed individuals who are housing secure in the Bow Valley make less than $30,000 a year. An interesting trend is that Bow Valley always has higher employment rates among housing insecure respondents compared to provincial data. Although we can see in both these charts that this year in particular, there was a higher percentage of folks who are employed and yet still housing insecure. There's a common misconception that homelessness is due to lack of employment. The survey results show that homelessness does not necessarily correlate to unemployment.
Another survey result worth noting is education levels. Over 70% of all housing insecure respondents have some post-secondary educations, with the majority having completed a bachelor's degree, as you can see in this slide.
Another result from the survey worth highlighting is the correlation between spending time in care as a youth and being homeless or housing insecure as an adult. Of all the survey respondents, 30% of them spent time in care as a youth, either foster care, group home, or some form of youth agreement. Of these folks, 100% are now housing insecure as adults, and 92% of these folk are Indigenous.
Another finding was that those housing insecure respondents, only 59% self-identified as housing insecure when we asked if they would consider their housing situation unstable. So many of respondents stated that their housing was stable, but they noted their home didn't have adequate services, such as heat or running water. It is possible that 41% of housing insecure respondents, which is over 400 people, may not be accessing the supports that could help improve their current housing situations. Research shows that people who do not access resources are more likely to stay stuck in the cycle of homelessness. People may think that they are doing okay because they have a roof over their head. But if there is no running water, heat, electricity, or any other significant thing is lacking, then that's not safe and that's not okay. As we know from previous research, prevention is more effective than emergency and crisis management.
Based on the findings outlined in this report, the Rural Development Network has identified 3 opportunities that we can undertake at a local level that are specific to the Bow Valley results. The first opportunity is focused on increasing community awareness and understanding of housing insecurity and homelessness. As mentioned earlier, 41% of respondents, or over 400 people, believed that their housing situation was secure, and yet they were living in unsafe conditions or precarious situations. These folks may not be aware of services available to them. Also, something that came up quite a bit in our qualitative results was that there were incidents of judgment and discrimination towards housing insecure folks. Many survey respondents spoke of a lack of empathy and compassion towards them. And racism was evident in survey responses, with respondents telling us about a lack of diversity and inclusion within the community. So it is important to promote the community's understanding of and empathetic reaction to community members who are experiencing housing insecurity and to increase awareness of services. Secondly, to encourage and manage sustainable growth. There is a need for accessible, affordable housing options in the Bow Valley. We know the town of Canmore is aware of this need and currently working on a housing action plan. Lastly, to promote and adapt short-term emergency solutions. This would include advocating for improved and increased emergency shelter options in the community. 51% of folks in this survey indicated that they did not or could not access an emergency shelter when needed. Reevaluating intake and operational policies to look for improvements, and any possibility to increase capacity is recommended.
So what is the next steps? Rural Development Network identifies 3 takeaways through larger provincial picture of data. First, given the number of service gaps identified in each community across the province, collaboration and continuing a regionalized approach to addressing homelessness will be important moving forward. The Bow Valley is already doing well with this. Having Homeless to Housing Coalition continues to work on preventing and reducing homelessness. Also, we have the system of care in place, including YWCA and HSBV. Secondly, research and data collection on rural, remote, and indigenous housing insecurity is essential to continue to identify, to monitor, and to address relevant housing issues and trends. There is a plan to do another estimation in 2 years. Details will be announced in early 2025. Lastly, an increase in provincial and federal funding to support communities located outside of the 7 major cities is required. With these recommendations in mind, strategic meeting on homelessness was held on August 30th with Homeless to Housing Coalition members and key stakeholders. The aim was to plan a collaborate data collection on homelessness and the use of emergency services, and to make a Bow Valley-wide case to support collective funding ask to provincial and federal government, as well as other funders. Currently, YWCA and HSBV are working on outlining a strategy to conduct the data collection in early spring or fall 2024.
We want to acknowledge that this estimation project would not be possible without the support of many different groups. Thanks to the Rural Development Network and the Reaching Home, Canada's Homeless Strategy, for funding and organizing this effort, and a big thanks to all the local community partner agencies listed here who helped promote and to administer the survey. That concludes our presentation. We're happy to take any questions that Council may have. Thank you.
Thank you to you both. Just on that slide right there, I think that this has been such a key to the success of developing this, is the reach that you've had with your survey. I think that's a difference from perhaps in the past, haven't had the same reach, because my feeling in the past was that there was some information provided, but it was just skimming the surface. And I certainly have known, many of us have known, that this is a very big problem here. How could it not be with the cost of living here? And to see those statistics around the level of education, the level of employment, the level of income, and they are housing insecure, these are members of our community. And we don't want them to go elsewhere, to have to live elsewhere, because they contribute to our community. And so I really appreciate this work being done. I have to say, Councillor McCallum's had more time on council than myself, but in all of my council time, I've never seen a report that hit me so hard. That's why I've been involved in some of those things before and helped with the homeless, because I know it's an issue here. And now we have numbers that we can use to advocate for. So thank you for that work. I'm just wondering, is there any way to discern, because I know that this is Bow Valley wide, it went to a number of different communities, is there any way to discern how many are Canmore specific?
We have a breakdown for how many people identified themselves as residents of each location, whether that be Canmore, Banff, Lake Louise, but we don't know for sure who the numbers of each category within those locations. Yeah. How many are housing insecure or at risk or in shelters or not. Right. And it would also be difficult to categorize because it does change quite a bit. When folks are here in the month of March of this year when the survey was done, They told us that they had experienced being in a shelter within the past month, but we don't know for sure if that was even here in the Bow Valley,
Right.
or perhaps they had traveled from somewhere else.
I was wondering about that because just given the numbers versus the numbers at the Homeless Society of the Bow Valley, I was wondering if it might have been a little bit of that. But it was very interesting to see how long a majority of the people have lived here, 85% over a year, but it was over 50% over 5 years. And a good chunk of them all their lives, right? So
Yes.
these are members of our community. Opening it up to other questions from other members of council. Councillor Mott.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It's Miss West and Sachiko Miller. Okay, thank you. I know this is a snapshot in time of, say, March. In your estimation, do you feel that housing insecurity is its swing throughout the year? So perhaps there's times of the year where it's even more severe than what you're saying here.
It's possible there could be times of year that are more severe or less. Previously, estimations were done on one night of the year. So expanding it to a month is an improvement and gathering a larger picture of data, but I don't think we've ever done it on any other greater timeline than that. So until that happens, we wouldn't really be able to compare accurately.
Thank you.
Looking to see if there are any other questions. Seeing none, thank you very much for this work. Thank you for the work that you do. Certainly encourage you to continue to do that, and please keep us advised as to how we can help. And I'm very glad to know that we are also on the right track with our support and focus on housing. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the next one, I'm just going to call a short break. We'll resume at 1:55. We will move to item D2, Financing Resilient Infrastructure Project, FRIP. Van Gaal, welcome back since the last item,
Yes, thank
or
you.
the item before that with the delegation. Yes.
Thank you. All right, well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here today to give you a quick update on the Financing Resiliency Infrastructure Project, also known as FRIP. This was a presentation that was provided to the Emergency Management Advisory Committee earlier this year, and it was thought at that meeting that we should bring it forward to the rest of the Committee of the Whole for information. So throughout my presentation, I'm just going to give you a quick overview about what is the Financing Resilient Infrastructure Project, who are the project participants, what is the project objectives and deliverables, what are the Town of Canmore projects under the larger FRIP program, the next steps, and then open it up to questions. So what is FRIP? So this is an exploratory project hosted by ICLEI Canada and cooperators to support municipalities build resilience through some potentially innovative funding mechanisms. This is a program that is looking to pilot or explore different funding mechanisms for large-scale resilient infrastructure projects, using a handful of municipalities as case studies. The lessons learned from this program will ultimately be rolled out across the industry and could inform future funding approaches. So why FRIP? ICLEI and cooperators, with the support of past Edmonton Mayor Don Iveson, noted that the implementation of climate adaptation actions has not kept pace with the planning for climate change. ICLEI and cooperators felt that given the accelerating change of climate and the multi-billion-dollar loss events frequently occurring, a new and innovative approach that included private investors, technical experts, innovative bundling alongside all levels of government is needed to achieve the scale and speed of resilient infrastructure construction that is required. So why was Canmore chosen to participate? So ICLEI and cooperators, to build the case studies for this project, were looking for municipalities from across Canada that have a proven track record for taking bold and progressive action on climate change mitigation and adaptation. Within Canada, Canmore and its council are seen as leaders on local climate action, and this is demonstrated with the passing of the Climate Action Plan, the Climate Adaptation Plan, our emergency response plans for extreme heat, smoke, wildfire, and flooding, with Council's declaration of a climate emergency, as well as Council's strategic plan, which prioritizes bold climate and environmental action. ICLEI also noted that we sent out an RFP earlier this year to update our climate emergency action plan, and they were impressed that even though we have taken action on climate action, we are still continuing to improve and look for innovative ways to move the needle. And this is why Canmore was one of 11 municipalities from across Canada selected to participate in the FRIP program. So the main objective of the program and the core component is to develop 2 to 3 project profiles for each municipality. The information and details collected about each project and compiled as part of these project profiles is aligned with the questions asked in most major lending and granting application forms within Canada. The final project profiles will include elements relating to budgeting, project financing, timing, partnerships, and how to monitor for progress. Another key component of the FRIP program is that through the development of the project profiles, it will enable participating municipalities to connect with financial experts from both the private and public sectors. These opportunities to dialogue and exchange on topics related to project feasibility, return on investment, and other finance-related questions will be a valuable tool in moving forward with designing implementation-ready projects with an accompanying project profile. It is also intended that the work piloted with FRIP, this FRIP program, can be translated to other municipalities across Canada. So this slide shows you the time frame for the FRIP program. The FRIP program started in March 2023, and it consisted of a series of meetings with the larger municipal participant group, along with one-on-one meetings with the municipality and ICLEI, and meetings between our finance team and cooperators, all working towards the development of these project profiles. We are now nearing the end of the program, with it anticipated to wrap up on December 14th. So as mentioned, the key deliverable for the FRIP program was a set of project profiles the municipality could have on hand should funding become available in the future. This would allow us to more easily apply for those grant applications in a more timely manner. So for the town, when developing these project profiles, we pulled together a cross-departmental team to identify resiliency projects that could be explored further that are not already funded. 16 projects were identified by staff, and these projects were evaluated by ICLEI and an advisory committee to determine their suitability for the program, along with their bankability and interest from private investors. As you can see by the list on this slide of the participants in the advisory committee, it consists of mostly major lenders and granting bodies within Canada. Giving these organizations access to the type of projects that are being considered by municipalities across Canada could hopefully have benefits beyond just this program, especially when it comes to how funding programs are designed in the future. So of the 16 projects that were put forward, they were evaluated by the advisory committee and ranked on a scale of 1 to 3, with 1 being a good and clear fit for the program, 2 having potential, and 3 not being a fit for the program. 6 of our projects were shortlisted, 1 scoring a 1 and 5 scoring a 2. So the projects that were shortlisted are shown here. And we were then asked to narrow that down to 2 to 3 projects to evaluate in more detail to have the project profiles developed. So the projects that we put forward for project profile development were first the wastewater treatment plant berm, and this is a project that is looking at elevating the road height around the wastewater treatment plant to serve as a berm during overland flooding events. This project is also looking at repairing the riprap along the Bow River to prevent further erosion during high river flow events. The second project was combining 3 of the projects that we put forward into a project titled Community Hardening. This will look at upgrading current critical facilities to reduce wildfire risk, such as hardening of exterior materials. It'll also ensure that critical facilities from our reception centers to our drinking water pump stations have backup power supply, and it would look at empowering residents to take measures on their own property to improve their wildfire resilience. And then the third project, it was around low-impact development. So this is looking at naturalized ways to reduce flooding during heavy rainfall events. So these are items such as bioswales for stormwater management. So the next and final steps of the FRIP program is that we are currently wrapping up the project profiles with ICLEI. There's a few minor details to sort out, and they are being assessed by the advisory committee as we speak. We'll be meeting next week to discuss the results of the advisory committee review. There is the potential that cooperators or another member of the advisory committee could choose to fund one of these projects from across Canada. This was initially expressed as part of the intent of the program, but we have yet to hear how that's going to roll out now that they've seen the project profiles. Regardless of whether or not funding does come from this project, we will have 3 project profiles on hand should funding come from another source down the road. And I will note that if funding does become available, administration would then return to council and follow the proper capital project funding requests. This project was a great learning opportunity for both municipalities and for private lenders, and it will be interesting to see how the lessons learned here play out in funding applications and funding availability in the future from private investors. And with that, I would like to thank you, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, thank you, Ms. Van Gaal, for your presentation. And when Councillor Ma and I heard it in the Emergency Management Committee, we thought it was absolutely imperative. Oh, and Ms. Councillor Hillstead was there too. So, you know, quite frankly, he's only been at the one meeting, so you know. He hasn't quite obviously, you know, formed an image in my mind of being there. But when the 3 of us were there, we thought the rest of council and admin and the community need to hear about this, because A, it's quite an honor just to be part of it. And through that, we have this learning opportunity. And whether we get funded or not, to have 2 or 3 shovel-ready projects, because that's what sometimes is coming out with funding these days. They want to fund shovel-ready projects. It's nice to have those in hand. So thank you for that. Looking to then the committee of the whole to see if you have any questions. Councillor Ma.
Thank you so much for presenting this, Gall. I think some questions I'll hear from people is like, with regards to the private investment piece for the funding, is there an ownership stake that comes with that for these projects that are being proposed, or do they stay within the ownership of the municipalities?
So that's really part of the intent of the program, is to pilot different ways of how that could look. So it could be an ownership stake potentially. That's what we're hoping to hear about in more detail on November 29th, once they've assessed all the projects that have been presented. And depending on the type of project, different funding mechanisms may apply. And so it was really trying to explore ways to allow municipalities to have access to large pots of money outside of how they can normally access money if there's, based on available grants and their own ability to secure money through loans and debt. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now move to item E1, Councillor updates. Any questions with respect to my report? Seeing none, any questions for Councillor Faubert? I think Councillor Faubert and we didn't have the conversation about who will report on transit. And I found it interesting that we actually reported on the exact same things. I know, so, well done. Yeah. Okay, no questions there. Councillor Graham did provide us some information, but he was unable to make the deadline, so that's why it's not in here. Councillor Graham, is there anything you wanted to particularly highlight with the public? No? Okay. Councillor Hill, any questions for Councillor Hillstad? I do appreciate all those stats and the Planning Commission information. Just curious, why was the last the Planning Commission postponed? Was it a time issue, or?
The board just felt that we needed some more information. The applicant wasn't able to attend, so we weren't able to ask questions of the applicant, so we wanted to extend that invitation so that we can hopefully ask some more deep questions about their application and help us with our decision.
Is that the empty site, former Rexall site? Or?
That's the settler's cabin.
Oh, right there, okay.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Ma? I appreciated your the support that the students in affirming the direction that we've taken so far around paid parking. That was an interesting debate, so good job.
Yeah, it was interesting. We had, I kind of did a little bit of a look at the room, and I would have thought it'd been a little bit different, because there were a couple children in that classroom that did not live specifically in Canmore, and they fought the good fight, but they came out on the news again.
Don't even have driver's licenses.
Any questions for Councillor Mera? I'm interested to know, you were one of several that attended the Mountain Town Planners Summit. And is there something in particular that that you took away from that experience?
Other than we're not alone,
Yeah.
and that we're all in the same boat and in all same issues, housing, staffing. It was just consistent. And this Town Planners Summit is also out of the U.S. and Canada.
Yeah.
So even down there, they're experiencing the same things we are.
Right.
So we aren't different. I just think it was nice to collaborate with everybody. And there wasn't any real big aha moments. other than how approaching different ways of approaching the subject, sorry.
No,
Councillor
that's good.
McCallum might
Yeah,
have a-
Councillor McCallum.
I would say that if we think we have our hands tied here, they have them even further tied in the States. Like, you can't, in Idaho, you can't, as a municipality, tell somebody that they cannot use their home as a short-term rental.
Yeah.
Like, there are some things where it's just, like, it has to go on a ballot. If we had to put everything that they do on a ballot, well, we would look like America. But,
Yeah, it's
'Cause it's just
it's
hard
very
to get
interesting, the
things
different
through.
jurisdictions. And that's why it's not transferable when somebody says, "Hey, why don't you do what's happening over there?"
I know.
Well, it may not be allowed here, right? And, when I travel down to Sedona they don't have property taxes. They fund everything through a bed tax and state and federal grants. And so that, they have that ability to tax the visitors to fund the
Definitely,
infrastructure,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So-
They have more autonomy, but within that autonomy, they still don't have much flexibility. It's
That's
kind
right.
of strange. I don't know if that makes sense, the way I explained it, but.
Councillor Moy, you have something to add?
Yeah, just with respect to the conference as well, and say, like, I really feel one of the worst-case situations was for Idaho, but even there, they were able to get pretty creative and find ways to create housing. They definitely left no stone unturned. They would, like, map out every single patch of land, see what was potentially available, and try to work with what they got. And that alone was pretty inspiring to see.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for those comments. Any questions with regards to Councillor McCallum? I just.
I would like to make a statement on 4E, where I attended series of floor plan meetings. Guess what meetings I'm talking about? Because I did not put it in
I was
there.
going to guess livability task force.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what? I asked the
like-
question. I actually jotted down, what are these meetings for? And then I went to the administrative reports, and I think it was either in Ms. Rogers or Dr. Cottle's report, it said, we've done 3 or 4 meetings. I went, oh, yes.
Yeah, I
Made the
clearly did not
connection.
complete my thought, my apologies.
Yeah, no problem. Any questions there for Councillor McCallum? No? Okay, then we will move to administrative updates. Any questions with respect to Section A? Moving to Section B. Councillor Faubert? Nope, okay, all right. Then Section C. This one? No, okay. Okay, I'll just move it. Yeah, Section D. Councillor Faubert?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Crowser. Under Streets and Roads, under the Snow and Ice Control Stakeholder Engagement Meeting, the final point says, discussing a logical snow emergency strategy, including preparation, communication, accountability, and response. What's a snow emergency strategy? Do we have one? Are we working on one?
Okay, and then, oh, they're wonky here, just a second. Okay. There we go.
Oh, man, it's going to be a disappointing answer. I am not quite sure I can follow up and get back to you specifically on what that strategy would be. These meetings are really coordinating the multiple entities that participate in the town's snow removal program. I'm not sure exactly what he meant by emergency strategy, but I can find out and get back to you. Council.
I think in my recent memory, we've had 2 scenarios which I would have considered a snow emergency. And so I guess I was kind of wondering if this was going to, this work was going to result in a strategy, because I believe with climate change, we're going to see more of them. And so I'm excited about this, because I think this is what we need to be working on.
Yeah, I think this is more about executing within the existing council policy, but like I said, I can follow up and get back to council.
Thank you. Councillor Hillstad, you have a question?
Yes, for the winter shutdown plan for the Cougar Creek long-term mitigation, I'm just wondering if that's been bumped back at all since we've had such good weather, or if it's still planned for late November or early December, if they're going to keep just plugging along until they can, or if they are just going to be like, okay, we're calling it at some point. But
Sorry, I couldn't hear the beginning of that.
sorry, for the Cougar Creek mitigation for the winter shutdown?
Yeah.
Just in the report, it says late November, early December, but since we've had such good weather, I'm just wondering if they've tried to keep pushing that out, or if they're had more selected a kind of a set date, or if they're playing it as the weather.
No, they're still working towards the late November, early December shutdown. I believe they're on lift 4 right now. But yeah, they're still planning to keep to that general schedule and then start up again in the spring.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had a question as well with regards to the pond. It says here that will be, suggest the pond 7 will be very small this season. What is very small?
Potentially non-existent.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, not again, but these agendas are submitted pretty early on. I think this is probably about 3 weeks old now.
Yeah.
So what we know is there's next to no water in the pond. Typically, when we're able to flood it for skating, there's already a layer of ice where if even the water underneath it drains, at least there's a surface there that we can flood and build upon. But without that layer of ice, it's not looking good for us being able to flood that surface for this winter.
There's also it's been in the news a lot in the last week about how southern Alberta, in particular, has been in a long drought. And so we also have to balance whether that's a responsible use of water in those times, but.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the main issue is without that layer of ice, the water will just continue to seep in, right? So, but even aside from that, I think it's a fair point. Using potable water to flood that surface, it is something that we should be questioning.
Okay, thank you. So very small is very small, like 0.
At the time of writing, very small. Now, likely nothing. Yeah. I mean, we can't predict the weather, but that's kind of where things
Chances
sit
are
right
slim
now.
and none.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll just add to that, it is 11 degrees out right now.
Yeah.
So our ability to, we can't flood when it's 11 anyway. And I know temps are supposed to drop, but there are conditions that have to exist for several days before we can even consider that. So right now, it's not an option anyway.
Yeah, we don't have choice. It would not work. Thank you. And just a side note, I'm not sure whose responsibility, we do need to get these lights lined up here so that, okay, because I don't know exactly still who to push to turn things on and off. Okay. Okay. Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. I think. Well, you're manager 3 there. Okay. 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 Any other questions on the administrative report? On the resolution action list? A number of those are going to fall off. Councillor McCallum.
Oh, I was just going to comment on the ice thing, and then I
okay.
decided not to. But all I was going to say was, do you remember when Lisa Guest did that presentation about the building of an ice rink? I wonder if we could find that, because that would be helpful, I think, in explaining the conditions required. Anyways, that's all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. No further questions then. We'll move to item I1, personnel matter. So I move that council take the meeting in camera to prevent disclosure of personal information in accordance with section 17 sub 4 sub G, the Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act. Now, before calling that question, I just will note that there is no decision to be made following this, and so we'll just be coming out of camera and ending the meeting, and therefore we're going to end the recording right now. Okay, and I'll call the vote then. All those in favor?